In this video we will discuss about growth factor and how it is related to cancers. So let us understand what is growth factor. Growth factor are generally secreted by the cells in the extracellular environment, and that is used by another cells in order to grow, or more specifically to divide the cells. So let us understand first the cell cycle phase. What is cell cycle phase? In this it is divided into different sections. Let us start with the G1. G1 is known as the growth phase, when the cells that are initially been divided is starts to grow, and in this various organelles of the cells begins to grow. And after that it comes a S phase. In S phase the duplication of the genetic material occur, that is the duplication of the DNA occurs. Then comes the G2 phase. In G2 phase further growth of the cell occurs and it will prepare for the mitosis. Mitosis in general terms is just the division of the cells, so that cell divides and then this cycle repeats within each uh, daughter of the cells. And in this G1 phase, here is the red line. This red line represents the growth factor. So if there is no growth factor, the cell will continue to continue and will perpetuate itself in the G1 phase. And this is known as senescent stage, where cells are metabolically active but are not growing or dividing itself in the absence of growth factor. If there is a growth factor, then they will continue to grow and divide. And what happens because of growth factor is explained in this figure. So when the growth factor is available in the extracellular matrix, it attaches to the receptor of the growth factor receptor of the cell division, and this uh, triggers the tyrosine kinase signal, and tyrosine kinase signals the nucleus to divide the cells, to proceed for the division of the cells, and this results in the division of the two cells. So this is how the growth factor works. And as we know that one of the important uh, properties of the cancer cell is to replicate fast. So in order to do so, this growth factor plays an important role. uh, as we have discussed in previous videos, uh, some of the cancers produce their growth factor on their own, whereas some of the cancer cells reduce the requirement of growth factor, so that the growth factor does not become a limiting factor in their uncontrolled growth. However, researchers have found out few ways in order to control this cancer cells growth, and one of these factor is to decrease the growth factor. So for those cancer that produce the growth factor, it produces its own growth factor, will not get much affected. But however, those cancer cells that needs the growth factor, however, but are not able to produce their own growth factor, will get affected by this strategy, that is decreased growth factor. That is, if there is no the less amount of growth factor, cells will not get the signal to divide itself, and after some time the cancer cells will reduce and their growth decreases. Uh, and next strategy is to block the growth factor receptor. That is, this strategy works well even for those cancer cells that produce their own growth factor. So in this case, the receptor is blocked so that it will not be able to interact with the growth factor, and even those cancer cells that are able to produce their growth factor, will not be able to utilize those growth factor in their own growth or in their own cell divide. However, this strategy will not work for those kind of cancer cells that reduces the requirement of growth factor. And the third strategy is people that are working on is to block the signal inside the growth factor. It is blocking these signals. if they block these signals, even though the growth factor attached to the receptors, because this signals is not functioning properly, it will not be able to give signal to the nucleus for further division. In this case is also applicable or also works for those cancer cells that needs less amount of growth factor for their further cell division, because if this signals is not functioning properly, even the small requirement is even the small requirement of growth factor is not sufficient to divide the cells and proceed for uncontrolled growth. So these are the three strategies that scientists are focused or working on in order to cure the cancer or reduce the impact of the cancers within the patients. So that's all for this video. Thank you for your time.